Okay, there. So we're continuing with our article on the eschatology in this New American Bible that's a Catholic Bible. So I think I covered a lot of this already. I've read through both of this. I think it was Matthew 24 as well as First Thessalonians. So let's dig in here and see Matthew 24, the notes. And basically, I was going into an overview. I think it was talking about the eschaton, which is the coming of the new age in its fullness. And it's talking about Matthew 24, 1 through 25, just giving an overview. With events that will precede it, talking about the end, the new age, and with how the disciples are to conduct themselves while awaiting an event that is as certain as its exact time is unknown. Let's see here. To all but the Father. So not even Jesus knows this day. So let's see here. The discourse may be divided into two parts. So it's talking about Matthew 1 through 44 and Matthew 24, 45 to 25, just splitting it in sections. And it's saying, this is a little more scholarly, a little more technical, but in the first, Matthew follows the Markan source. So he's saying he's following the book of Mark, which was written before, earlier. So he's actually using it as a base text. Let's see. And then the second part, okay, so he's the first part, 1 through 44, he's pretty much following Mark's discourse, because this would be the synoptic gospel. So that's true. A second is drawn from Q. So he's saying he's using another manuscript to get the information to write verses 45 through 24, 45 through 46. Oh, all the way through chapter 25 through 46. Okay. So there must be another manuscript floating around. That's what they're saying, according to this theory. Anyway, Matthew wrote it. That's all we need to know. Q, and from the evangelist's own traditional material, both parts show Matthew's editing of his sources by deletions, additions, and modifications. So he was editing. Obviously, there were other gospels and writings and letters at the time. So there's nothing wrong, with understanding some of this stuff. It's just most people don't want to go this deep. Editing his sources, okay, by additions, modifications. The vigilant waiting that is emphasized in the second part does not mean a cessation of ordinary activity and concentration only on what is to come, but a faithful accomplishment of duties at hand, with awareness that the end, for which the disciples must always be ready, will entail the great judgment by which the everlasting destiny of all will be determined. So this is getting down to it. Okay, let's keep going. 24 verse 2. As in Mark, Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple by omitting the Markan story of the widow's contribution. Matthew, Mark 12, that immediately precedes the prediction. Okay, so he's comparing Mark to Matthew now. In that gospel, Matthew has established a close connection between it and Matthew 23:38, your house will be abandoned and desolate. Okay. All right, chapter 24, verse 3, the Mount of Olives. And it's referring me to Matthew 21. Okay, the disciples were only Peter, James, and John. Andrew put the question that is answered by the discourse. In both Gospels, however, the question is put privately. The ensuing discourse is only for those who are disciples of Jesus. When will this happen? The end of the age. Matthew distinguishes carefully between the destruction of the temple, this referring to the stones that were to be thrown down, and the coming of Jesus that will bring the end of the age. In Mark, the two events are more closely connected, a fact that may be explained by Mark's believing that the one would immediately succeed the other. Coming. This translates the Greek word parousia, which is used in the Gospels only here and in verses 27, 37, and 39. It designated the official visit of a ruler to a city or the manifestation of the saving deity, and it was used by Christians to refer to the final coming of Jesus in glory. So it's talking about one final coming in glory, a term first found in the New Testament with that meaning. 1 Thessalonians 2:19, the end of the age. See the note in Matthew 13. Okay, so let's continue on here. Chapter 24. Now these are all like translator notes. Matthew 24 verses 4 through 14. This section of the discourse deals with calamities in the calamities in the world, and it's like 6 through 7, and in the church 9 through 12. The former must happen before the end comes. So he's talking about 6 and 7 here, the calamities, but they are only the beginning of the labor pains. It may be noted that the Greek word translated the end in verse 6 and in verses 13 through 14 is not the same as the phrase the end of the age. In verse 3, although the meaning is the same, the latter are sufferings of the church, both from within and without, that will last until the gospel's preached to all the nations. Then the end will come, and those who have endured the sufferings will, with fidelity, will be saved. Wow. So this may be describing, what would they call it? Pre-tribulation, or premillennialism, historic premillennialism. So we'll see. The disturbances mentioned here are commonplace of apostolic language, as it is announced that they must happen. And it's talking about Daniel 2:28. For that is the plan of God, kingdom against kingdom. The labor pains, the tribulations leading up to the end of the age are compared to the pains of a woman about to give birth. There is much attestation for rabbinic use of the phrase the woes or birth pains of the Messiah after the New Testament period. But in at least one instance, it is attributed to a rabbi who lived in the late 5th century AD. In this Jewish usage, it meant the distress of the time preceding the coming of the Messiah. Here, the labor pains precede the coming of the Son of Man in glory. So, all this stuff we see in the world now, maybe that's what we're talking about here. Wars and rumors of wars. Okay, Matthew has used Mark 13, 9 through 12 in his missionary discourse. Matthew 10, 17 through 21, and omitted it here. So he's rearranged some material. That's what they're comparing. Besides the suffering, including death, and the hatred of all nations that the disciples will have to endure, there will be worse affliction within the church itself. This is described in verses 10 through 12, which are peculiar to Matthew, I guess. So 10 through 12 is where it talks about, and then many will be led into sin. They will betray and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise, deceiving and deceive many. And because of the increase of evil doing, the love of many will grow cold. So that's what it's talking about, Matthew 24. Will be led into sin. Literally, will be scandalized. Probably meaning that they will become apostates. Okay, so I think this is interesting because this applies to our day, because the last two popes in the church of the Catholic, the actual Church of Christ, have been scandalous. I mean, to the faithful, to where people are just heresy after heresy. Anyway, let's continue here. So it can cause you to become apostate and not stop going to church, which that happened to me. But okay, let's keep going. The apostates see. Okay, where falling away translates the same Greek word as here, betray. So betray, the Greek, this is the same word as the hand over verse 9. The handing over to persecution and hatred from others or from outside will have their counterpart within the church. False prophets, these are Christians, and evil doing because of the apocalyptic, because of the apocalyptic nature of much of this discourse. The literal meaning of this description of the church should not be pressed too hard. However, there is reason to think that Matthew addition of these verses reflects some measure of condition of his community. So this is getting down into the nitty gritty. So he's talking about, the persecutions from inside as well as outside the church, and false teachers, and we got a lot of those now. So Jesus was right once again, except for the last part, and then the end will come. This verse substantially repeats Mark. So he's following Mark so much up until now. And he's talking about, and then the end will come. That's in verse 14 of chapter 24. Okay. The Matthew edition raises a problem, since what follows after in verses 15 through 23, refers to the horrors of the first Jewish revolt, including the destruction of the temple, and Matthew, writing after that time, knew that the parousia of Jesus was still in the future. A solution may be that the evangelist saw the events of those verses a foreshadowing, or as foreshadowing the cosmic disturbances that he associates with the parousia. Okay, that makes sense. So he was actually, it had already been happened, so he was looking forward to that, so that the period in which the former took place could be understood as belonging to the end. Interesting. A further stage of the tribulation that will precede the coming of the Son of Man, and the answer to the question of verse 3a, when will the destruction of the temple happen? Okay, so we're at chapter 24, verse 15, the desolating abomination. In 167 AD, 167 BC, the Syrian king Antiochus IV Epiphanes desecrated the temple by setting up in it a statue of Zeus Olympius, and that's in the book of Maccabees, 154. That event is referred to in Daniel 12:11 as the desolating abomination, the horrible abomination. And the same Greek term is used here. Okay, Daniel 9:27-11-31. Although the desecration had taken place before Daniel was written, it is presented as a future event. So the time that it happened before in the Old Testament, before Daniel's time, 167 BC, wow, that's interesting. So it's like history repeats itself for real here. Although the desecration had taken place before Daniel was written, it is presented there as a future event, as Matthew sees that prophecy fulfilled in the desecration of the temple by the Romans in 70 AD. You see, in the holy place, the temple more precise than Mark's, where he should not. Okay, gotcha. Let the reader understand this parenthetical remark taken from Mark 13:14. It invites the reader to realize the meaning of Daniel's prophecy. So as Daniel, when he was writing, had already have a prequel to the desolation through Antiochus Epiphanes, which happened in 167. So the same thing, when he saw 70 AD, Matthew, that was his prequel to the coming desolating abomination in the book that will happen in the future at the end of time. Oh, wow, this is deep. Okay, 24:16. The tradition that the Christians of Jerusalem fled from the city to Pella, the city of Transjordan, at the time of the first Jewish revolt, is found in Eusebius. Now I have his book. It's like the history of the church. Ecclesiastical history. Okay, yeah. who attributes the flight to a certain oracle given by revelation before the war. The tradition is not improbable, but the Matthew command derived from the Mark account source is vague in respect to the place of flight to the mountains. So it just gives a general thing. They went to the mountains. Although some scholars see it as applicable to the flight to Pella. Okay, so they're trying to connect the dots. Hast is essential, 24:17 through 19. The journey will be particularly difficult for women who are burdened with unborn or infant children. So that's generally true. Okay, 24:20. On the Sabbath, okay, it's this addition to in winter has been understood as an indication that Mark was addressed to a church still observing the Mosaic law of Sabbath rest and the scribal limitations upon the length of journeys. So, oh wow, that's interesting. That might lawfully be made on that day. That interpretation conflicts with Matthew's view. Oh, this is interesting. So he's still comparing Matthew. Okay, I don't know. On the Sabbath of observance. The meaning of the addition may be that those undertaking on the Sabbath a journey such as the one he ordered would be offending the sensibilities of law-observing Jews and would incur their hostility. For the unparalleled distress of that time. That's 21. Okay, verses 26 through 28 claims that the Messiah is to be found in some distant or secret place must be ignored. The coming of the Son of Man will be as clear as lightning is to all, and as the corpse of an animal is to vultures. So it will be drawn to him, all the believers. That's what that means. Here there is clear identification of the Son of Man and the Messiah. Okay, verse 29. Let's see what this is. This is the answer to the question, what will be the sign of the coming? Immediately after those days, the shortening of time between the preceding tribulation and the parousia has been explained as Matthew's use of a supposed device of Old Testament prophecy whereby certainly that a predicted event will occur is expressed by depicting it as imminent, while it is questionable that that is an acceptable understanding of the Old Testament predictions. It may be applicable here, for Matthew knew that the parousia had not come immediately after the fall of Jerusalem, and it is unlikely that he is attributing a mistaken calculation of time to Jesus. The sun be shaken. So it's talking about the sun and the moon and the stars now. The sun be shaken. Okay. The sign of the Son of Man. Okay, so this is verse 30, I think. Isn't it? 24:30. The sign of the Son of Man. Perhaps this means the sign that is the glorious appearance of the Son of Man. Matthew 12. Oh no. Matthew 12:39 through 40, where the sign of Jonah is Jonah's being in the belly of the whale. Tribes of the earth will mourn, peculiar to Matthew, citation from Zechariah 12 through 14, coming upon the clouds. Glory. This is interesting. Glory. Daniel 7:13. Although there the one like a son of man comes to God to receive kingship. Here the Son of Man comes from heaven for judgment. So there's a difference there. You know, that's an interesting thing. Let's look up that one citation. Zechariah 12:12 through 14. If I can find it. Because that, I remember, Zechariah 12. Okay, here's Zechariah 12, verse 12. Okay, I was right on the right page. There's 10, 11. And the land shall mourn, each family apart, the family of the house of David and their wives, the family of the house of Nathan and their wives, the family of the house of Levi and their wives, the family of Shimei and their wives, and all the rest of the families, each family apart, and the wives apart. So that's interesting. Okay, so maybe it's just referring to the mourning that goes on during that time. Okay. Send out his angels, verse 31. Okay, where they are sent out to collect the wicked for punishment. Trumpet blast. Okay, and we know about that. It gives Isaiah 27. I'm not going to turn there. 1 Thessalonians 4:16. We just read that. Okay. The difficulty raised by this verse, verse 34. Let's get back to our place here. 34 would be, Amen, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth. Okay. The difficulty raised by this verse cannot be satisfactorily removed by the supporting of this generation means the Jewish people throughout the course of their history, much less the entire human race. Perhaps for Matthew, it means the generation to which he and his community belonged. All right, 36 through 44. The statement in verse 34 is now counterbalanced by one that declares that the exact time of the parousia is known only to the Father, and the disciples are warned to be always ready for it. This section is drawn from Mark and the Q document, wherever that came from. Okay. 24, verse 36. Many textual witnesses omit nor the Son, which follows Mark 13:32, since the omission can be explained by reluctance to attribute this ignorance to the Son. The reading that includes it is probably original. So it does include the Son. And let's see, that's 36. That's where he talks about only the Father knows, but of that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son. So some of the older manuscripts don't include nor the Son, but this is saying it's probably part of the original. So they included it. And that's in this version. So that's pretty good. Let's see here. Okay, in the days of Noah, the Old Testament account of the flood lays No emphasis upon what is central for Matthew, i.e., the unexpected coming of the flood upon those who were unprepared for it. Wow. Okay, 40 through 41, taken and left. The former probably means taken into the kingdom. The latter left for destruction. People in the same situation will be dealt with in opposite ways. In this context, the discrimination between them will be based on their readiness for the coming of the Son of Man. So that's interesting, because I just read that 40 and 41. That's the part where it says 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left. Wow. So that's pretty explicit there, that depending on when that time comes, I mean, it could come at the end of the age after the tribulation. So now that's historic premillennialism. Now, dispensationalism would say, oh, it would come at the end, but not right before the 7 years of tribulation, or possibly in the middle, like the last 3.5 years. But anyway, I digress. Let's keep going. The theme of vigilance and readiness is continued with the bold comparison of the Son of Man to the thief who comes to break into a house. Okay, that's verse 42 through 44. Verse 45 through 51, the second part of the discourse. Okay, see note, Matthew 24, blah, 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 blah. Begins with this parable of the faithful or unfaithful servant. It is addressed to the leaders of Matthew's church. The servant has been put in charge of his master's household, even though that household is composed of those who are his fellow servants. Okay, verse 45, to distribute. Proper time, readiness for the master's return, means vigilance that is accompanied by the faithful performance of their duty, the duty assigned. So keep up the faith. Keep the faith. Okay, verse 51, punish him severely. The Greek verb found in the New Testament only here and in the Lucan, so in the book of Luke, parallel, means literally cut in two with the hypocrites. See the note. Okay, Matthew. Okay, we need to read this. Okay, verse 51. We remember. Let's see, 51. That's like down here. And will punish him severely. So the faithful or the unfaithful servant. Who then is the faithful and the imprudent servant, whom the master has put in charge of the house of his household? The master has put in charge of his household to distribute to them their food at the proper time. Blessed is that servant whom his master on his arrival finds doing so. Amen, I say to you, he will put him in charge of all his property. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is long delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with drunkards, the servant's master will come on an unexpected day and at an unknown hour, and will punish him severely and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. So I think, let's see, that's the end of the chapter there. So, wow. So that's as close as I can say. I mean, it is pre-millennial story in the notes. That's what it's explaining. But I don't know if it's pre-tribulational, because you couldn't say, because it's talking about the tribulation there. And I'm going to let you read the rest of the article and come to your own conclusions. So God bless you and stay in the Word. Amen.